Welcome to Making Sense of AI, where we unravel the complexities of artificial intelligence, exploring its profound impact on our world. In each episode, we delve into the tension and promise of this transformative technology, seeking to uncover how AI is reshaping ethics, business, education, and beyond. Join us as we navigate the challenges and opportunities of the AI revolution, offering a hopeful vision for the future. Brought to you by Turner and Binova AI. In today's episode, we will share two conversations with powerhouses in the field of AI, digital accessibility, and scaling AI for global change. First up, my conversation with Dr. Irina Mirkina, AI strategist at UNICEF's Office of Innovation and AI strategist and head of AI and data. Irina, it is such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's so good always to talk to you, and I'm sure we're going to have a great discussion.
Yeah, I was so excited to reconnect with you because the first time we spoke was at the World Summit AI in October in Amsterdam, which is pretty much 6 months ago now. What I really remember about our conversation then is the expertise that you've had developing frameworks, working with your counterparts in the development of such frameworks to make sure that AI is a healthy and safe tool for learners globally. Tell us a little bit about that. What does that mean?
Wow, that's a question. So UNICEF, as the United Nations Children's Agency or Children's Fund, focuses on children's well-being, development, saving children's lives, and promoting children's rights. And that means obviously putting children's perspective at the heart of everything that we do and at the heart of everything that we advocate for. In all of the engagements that I have done as a representative of UNICEF, and there have been quite a few engagements developing international frameworks, new national regulations, national AI strategies, or just research pieces on both the potential and the risks of AI. Bringing child's perspective into all of this is what inspires me and what I think I can contribute the most to all of these pieces. To make it more practical, for example, there are quite a few privacy protection laws coming up, and obviously data quality and data protection are very related to the quality of the AI systems that are built on top of those data. But making sure that children's rights are respected when data are collected and processed is very important. Unfortunately, quite a few proposals or ethical principles speak of AI in the abstract without mentioning children once. So making sure that they are included in the list of vulnerable groups is what UNICEF does.
And your experience, I think you're so great at what you do, in part because you've worked across various not necessarily domains, but you're coming from the private sector and working into this globally extremely relevant space. Have you been able to leverage some of those learnings from the private sector and move those to your role at UNICEF? And if so, how?
Yes, to a large extent. I think whether it's the private sector, any of the industries that I've worked in before, or humanitarian organizations, we all struggle with the same questions. We all struggle with building quality AI systems. We all struggle with ensuring the accuracy and good outcomes coming out of the systems. We all struggle with adapting AI systems to the local context. The main challenge, I think, that I had to face when I joined UNICEF was just the scope of work that we do internationally. So the largest organization that I worked at in the private sector was also working internationally, but all of our systems could still be quite easily transferable across European countries. UNICEF works all over the world, right? And when something has been built in, let's say, a European or a North American context, we cannot automatically assume that that system will be transferred appropriately and would work correctly in any of the countries in, let's say, South America or Africa or Southeast Asia. And keeping that in mind was not new necessarily, but making that a priority was new. On the other hand, just bringing all the technical expertise that I've developed throughout my whole career to UNICEF, which is not a technology organization and would never be focused on technology, right? For us, AI or any other emerging tech is just a tool for serving children. Like that shift in perspective for the organization, becoming more technologically aware, becoming more AI literate, I hope I would be able to say that I could contribute to that.
I can imagine. And I think what you're saying here is very powerful. So we have systems like UNICEF, institutions like UNICEF. We have traditional school models that are very much rooted in a non-tech first narrative. Very beautiful, very important, absolutely critical. What are the challenges, though, that you see bringing a deeper AI conversation into such a space? The reason I'm asking is because it is something we experience as well, working with schools and other types of learning institutions where the two bodies might not be speaking the same language yet. How have you mitigated something like this?
It's a fascinating question, and I think in many cases it would depend on the specific organization and their use cases and how exactly they approach those use cases. If I may go back to my private sector experience, since you reminded me of that, one of the most valuable that person did not have that exact title, but that was the nature of their role. Basically, they translated between the techie people, software developers, or data scientists, or AI experts, and the business users, right? Because they were speaking very different languages. A person who was able to take business requirements and bring them to the techies and say, here is what we need to do in terms of like functionalities or features that we need to build, or how the model should produce the outcomes. And then take the responses from the data science team and bring them back to the business and say, here is what you will get, and here is how you will have to interpret the results, and here are some of the limitations or considerations that you need to keep in mind. That person turned out to be critical, right? It ties in a little bit with the literacy. We would hope that everybody would become AI literate at some point, because that is kind of the future that we are moving towards closer and closer. But until that happens, somebody translating would be absolutely crucial for the success of quite a few initiatives, because people who make decisions, educators, business leaders, CEOs, they don't have to understand the technology underlying AI, but they need to understand the outcomes. They need to understand the use cases. They need to be able to state requirements and use the outcomes of AI systems appropriately. At the same time, how they do that and how is that translated into the actual technical experience of people writing the code, that is the tricky part.
100%. And I think people do struggle with artificial intelligence because it isn't something that felt as tangible, until we started to engage with ChatGPT. It's right. So funny because, as you and I both know, AI has been around much longer than that. But what I think is really interesting in what you're saying is outcomes, right? So how would you propose that an educational institution or somebody involved with the well-being or the learning systems of their community, environment, country, how should they think about outcomes? What is And what can they expect?
Again, it probably depends on the nature of the educational institution, right? So a university would have different expectations than, let's say, a kindergarten or primary school. However, there are some very specific use cases where we already see the potential of AI to be absolutely transformational. And that is, for example, the ability of several AI, several types of AI to make education more inclusive, right? Assistive technologies like speech to text, text to speech that enable learning for all children, including children with disabilities. That should become the standard. That should become the norm, right? Education should not be exclusionary. So how do we make this the standard? Well, by making it the norm. This is the outcome that you should expect. Technology that is absolutely able to take any type of material and turn text into an audio. Likewise, I think being able to engage with the outcomes in a way that serves humans, right? Serves children, serves students, serves teachers, instead of serving the technology itself. The technology is just a tool. It's an incredibly useful and transformational tool, but the outcomes should cater to the humans. So again, phrasing the outcomes not in the terms of this is how many AI systems we have built, but what is absolutely necessary for our students to get a better education. And that could include using generative AI, for example, for generating new content. We have seen at UNICEF, for example, several pilots where teachers are trying to generate more content at different levels of difficulty for different topics, right? Because textbooks are great, but sometimes you want to test questions at different levels of difficulty. Generating lots of content very quickly is something that AI, and in particular generative AI, is really good at. So it simplifies teachers' work and it enables children to learn more quickly and more effectively. So those are really great outcomes. And again, they serve children, they serve teachers, they serve humans. I think as long as policy makers and decision makers remember that, place humans at the center of AI development, all of our jobs will be much easier.
I love that you're saying that, and it really prompts my next question. Let's pretend you are an educator in 3 different regions of the world, and I won't specify which, Irina, whatever feels comfortable for you, but you now have this incredible exponential technology at your fingertips. What are some of the barriers to implementation that 3 different teachers in different regions might face, and how could they go about mitigating these barriers?
Okay, yeah, probably different regions would have some challenges that are fairly common and some challenges that are country specific or sometimes even just location specific. So among the common challenges are obviously resource and capacity building. You need to have resources for the infrastructure. You need to have resources for data collection, if necessary, for fine-tuning AI systems. You need capacity building for the staff. You need to upskill your teachers or school administrators. Ultimately, it's about even simple things like what kind of devices those AI systems would be running off, because most advanced AI systems are very power hungry and resource hungry, and making sure that it works in all contexts, including low resource contexts. That's a challenge that a lot of organizations struggle with. UNICEF, for example, has a brilliant initiative together with the International Telecommunications Union called GIGA that uses image recognition to locate all schools in the world to map even those schools that are in very remote connections and locations and probably don't show up on all official statistics maps, and then providing internet connectivity to those schools to give students an opportunity to access knowledge that goes beyond their remote locations. In that case, like, that is what UNICEF is doing to empower local communities and to provide resources to give that internet connectivity, without which, a lot of access would just not happen. Among the country-specific or location-specific challenges, well, in many cases, language would be a barrier. Like, we all know that a lot of AI systems currently in use have been developed in North America, Silicon Valley as the epicenter of all of it, or at the very least in the global north more broadly. So they work really great in English as the default language, but they work less well, let's put it that way, when it comes to any other languages, right? Even high-frequency languages, not even mention the rest of the nearly 7,000 languages that exist in the world. And language is very explicitly tied to history and culture and understanding and the way of thinking about the world. So making sure that the proliferation of AI systems that are built in just a few selected languages, they don't actually erase local cultures, or that they work specifically for the local cultures. That is also something that everybody needs to pay attention to. So a lot of countries, for that reason, in Asia, in the Middle East, in Africa, they are building their own systems that are built and trained on the locally collected, locally sourced data, locally collected languages, and adapted to local cultural context. I think that's beautiful, and that's probably the only way forward, because then we can ensure that the value from those AI systems is created and remains in those countries where it's created.
Fair enough, Irina. And I think what you mentioned beautifully is just even not necessarily having the base technology, software, hardware in place to deploy something like AI is an interesting and really important comment. And I remember doing research on how different countries responded to the pandemic. And it was fascinating that, for example, in Brazil, very much television was leveraged because TVs were still more in people's homes. And I think making the technology should always be working for the human. That's something that we forget, or that many people might forget when they are like, wow, but it's so shiny and it's so good and it's, it's so what we need. Yes, but only if it's serving you. So what kind of guidelines can UNICEF provide for educators to help them understand if technology is serving them?
UNICEF has published our policy guidance on AI for children back 3 years ago, right? So it was before the advent but most of the guidelines there still apply. And it is make sure that the systems protect children, make sure that they do no harm, right? Make sure that they're fair, they don't discriminate, and make sure that children are involved in the discussions about whether or not those systems need to be used, if they are very specifically imposed on children, right? If you give those systems directly to children, let them choose, but also involve children, involve their opinions, hear their voices in designing systems. Specifically for educators, we have a lot of initiatives running right now that are very practically oriented, but we also work with national governments on building local capacity and on helping them understand the transformational potential of AI. Like I mentioned, assistive technologies is something that we work on quite a lot. So it's not just about the quality of education, although it is, but it is also about assisting the whole spectrum of what it means, what we mean by education, right? It's about making it more inclusive. It's about enabling lifelong learning experiences. It's about upskilling young people before they go on the job market, or it's about upskilling teachers or educators. There are quite a few components there, and we have several guidelines for different parts of it.
That's really beautiful. And I know that your guidelines have served some countries already. I don't want to call any countries out unless you feel comfortable, sharing some of the use cases. But for those countries, communities that are looking for the right place, what's the best way for them to access these? They are available on the UNICEF website. Is there?
Yes.
Wonderful.
I could probably share a few links for you to use later.
We would love that, actually, and we'll absolutely share with the community as well. I know that our listeners are interested in making things practical, and that it still is one of the challenges, Irina. Not too long ago, I was doing a keynote. The room was just packed with educators, and I asked, how many of you have already signed a contract with an AI services provider? Somebody who can actually implement this in your classroom. I guess you're laughing because no one raised their hand. Irina, not one person raised their hand. So I think there's still a disconnect between the conceptual level of conversations around AI that perhaps you and I are having, but you also have that experience of actually developing the product and understanding what an algorithm is. So what would you say to educators or those working in learning environments about implementing exponential technology? What would you want them to know?
Several things. So, on the one hand, I want to acknowledge that their sometimes apprehensions, sometimes concerns are justified, right? They are not stupid if they want to move slowly. They have the right to ask questions before they commit financially to any big decisions. On the other hand, I think we all will do well to remember that if our commitment to children, to human rights, is to promote education, including inclusive education, that means using all tools at our disposal. If we have a tool that can do amazing things, not using that means that we are not very good at our jobs. I'm sorry for being very blunt, but the justification for having that impact on children's lives, I've seen the impact it can make, or assistive technologies can make in the lives of children with disabilities, for example. If we can build more inclusive education and we are not doing that, we cannot at the same time say, we really care about children with disabilities, because it's just lip service. It's just Forex. You need to put your money where your words are. Mm-hmm. And it's the same for all types of AI, right? It's about evaluating what the technology can do for you, evaluating use cases, and then committing to it. Commitment obviously comes with, you need to know how to evaluate an AI systems. You need to know where you would be able to embed human oversight, how it would affect all other parts of your work. But I think the resistance that comes simply from, it's all new, or, there are too many choices and we don't know which one is the best one. Well, at this point, I agree that there are too many choices, but that is just an opportunity for you to evaluate and learn which one is the best for your specific context. It should not paralyze decision makers, is what I'm saying.
We have developed some frameworks in-house that can help educational institutions assess where they are, right? With regards to the AI readiness, how ready are you to implement tools? What's your data like? I think that's a question most people don't even think about. What's the infrastructure like? Does UNICEF have some of these frameworks as well that we can share?
Not external, like we have quite a few internal tools that we use to help our country offices and that we use in collaboration with national governments, but not for schools specifically, I don't think.
That's the funny thing, though. I think as the two become more and more intertwined, lifelong learning, every single moment is a learning moment. We now with AI actually have the ability to capture more of that, to make more use of it. Where do you see the opportunities for AI, generative AI, in the classroom and in the healthy development of children around the world? Where do you see the greatest opportunity?
I'm not afraid to repeat myself. Assistive technology is, I think, something that just changes people's lives, right? Generative AI, like text generators, are fantastic at producing massive amounts of content. So they simplify teachers' lives quite a lot. But assistive technologies is something that changes how children approach education, right? How many children are able to get education, because we also need to remember that in many countries, if you're a child with disabilities, you would never get out of the house, right? So giving that education early will change people's lives when those children grow up, right? So for me, when talking about audio generators, right, the assistive tech that generates speech from text, that will have a huge impact for years to come for every child that has interacted with that. With more applications that are coming into play on, for example, we've had a great example of an app that improves reading comprehension, right? It's a tiny mobile application that listens to children reading text from a book, listens to how the child pronounces words, and then corrects their pronunciation or helps them to phrase the words correctly. And from the results that we've seen, they've done an efficacy study. It doubles the reading comprehension. That's a transformational impact, because quite a few children, if they remain illiterate, they are then isolated from social life or from job opportunities when they grow up. So for me, placing humans at the center of it and thinking about how AI can be a tool that supports children and supports young people, supports when those adults grow up, that's brilliant.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I think working in the space, seeing the potential to free up time, right? Because I think my question isn't just what potential does AI offer in its form as AI, which is beautiful. I love the idea of assistive technologies. I think you bring some really important points to the forefront around the ability to be more inclusive now, while at the same time we can flip it and look at, well, it also opens up way more space to experiment offline. And it almost feels counterintuitive, but with this amount of information at our fingertips, it's actually freeing up so much time in a child or a young person's life to also leverage these tools to bring their passions to life, whether it's spending more time working with animals or creating music. It always goes back to making it work for you. And that doesn't necessarily mean using it all the time. Do you have advice or suggestions or research-backed evidence that would point and help educators understand how they can also encourage learners to have a healthy relationship with, powerful technology like AI?
There are several points there, and I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a few anecdotal stories. If you don't mind, I might share them. I think quite a few kids these days understand at least some of the emergent technologies even better than their teachers. I make this, it's a very generalized assumption, so I'm very aware that it may not be correct always. But kids don't think of it as, something scary or something that is difficult, right? They simply see it as a reality, and therefore they are more free to experiment with it, to approach it as something that is interesting and therefore worthy of learning. Whereas adults in many cases see that as it's a one more burden on my to-do list. Mm-hmm. And if it's a burden, you are obviously less inclined to spend time on actually experimenting with it and learning and so on. So I've seen quite a few examples where children would actually teach their parents on how to use a chatbot or any sort of generative AI tool. On the other hand, like there were a couple of stories that were recounted quite recently. One is an apocryphal story from one of the provinces in India where elephants were quite frequently destroying the farms and destroying the vegetable gardens and so on. And to fend off the elephants, children had to stay up all night and kind of guard their farms, guard their fields. Obviously, if you're staying up all night, you're not going to school in the morning well rested and interested to learn and anything. But with AI, with specific sensors that were installed in those farms, producing very high-pitched sound that scared elephants, children could stay at home, get enough rest, and then go to school. Like you said, get the free time to actually do what they would benefit from, instead of guarding against the elephants. So again, it's about how the tool is used, and it's also about looking at what's out there, right? If it's generative AI, if it's any other type of AI, what can we use it for? What I would suggest to any educator, to any educational institution, more broadly, is to review all the possibilities and select those that really, really serve them. And I think they would be amazed by how many of their problems they thought were absolutely the reality, just something that they have to endure, but they could definitely be solved with technology already.
That is such a beautiful story. I love that. And I love it because it's far removed from the experience that the typical AI conversation takes shape, as in we're constantly talking about generative AI and we're constantly talking about a chatbot engagement, which is fine, but this is such a beautiful example of, hey, it actually is freeing up kids to go to school, and that is amazing. I think these types of stories are also what keeps people motivated and interested in a technology which otherwise could feel very overwhelming. You've, as mentioned at the beginning, transitioned from the private sector to UNICEF. Has your perspective on AI's potential and even AI's risks, has it evolved? Has it stayed the same? How would you assess that?
I switched to UNICEF for a very specific reason, right? I wanted to have a job with a purpose. I wanted to use my skills to do something good with technology. And that certainly came through in all of the projects that we do right now, because they actually have very clear applications. They have very clear positive social impact. And I feel immensely proud of the work that we do. My perspectives changed a little bit, in part because I saw how much work still needs to be done. And it's not only about implementing AI systems or building AI systems, but in many cases, even explaining to people what AI can do for them. That's a huge part of my work, a very rewarding work for sure, because I go around basically inspiring people. I think it's beautiful. And I think that's what you do as well as part of your work. But when I see how much educating I still have to do, I realize that quite frequently the pace of the development, like the industry development, far outpaces how much the world is ready for it. And that kind of scares me sometimes.
I can imagine.
On the other hand, quite a lot of my perspectives that I'm bringing from the private sector to UNICEF, they remain the same. I'm a very pragmatic person, right? Right now, especially with generative AI, we are very much at the top of the hype cycle. And everybody, like you said in the beginning, it's this beautiful, shiny toy that everybody wants to play with. I'm a very pragmatic person. I want to see what that tool can do for a specific purpose. For many specific purposes, it's wonderful. In some cases, it's actually needs some work before it can be useful. And that's perfectly valuable, right? Evaluating the impact and evaluating the risks is definitely how we need to approach all AI development or procurement. You don't have to build the systems yourself. You can just buy them. The last point that I want to make, putting a very strong emphasis on human rights is, like, I use the words human rights a lot more right now than I used when I worked in the industry, because if we are not thinking about humans, if we are not advocating for human-centered AI, then who would, right? And I think that's actually the value of it, because a lot of our work, what we do at the Office of Innovation, for example, is about leading by example. We don't just talk about how important AI ethics is. We build algorithms responsibly, and we show that it's possible. It's absolutely possible to keep child's interests at the center of what we do. Inclusiveness, fairness, non-discrimination, transparency, privacy, embedding all of this throughout the deployment and the development of an AI system is possible. What we end up with is much better systems than a lot of commercially available products, which means responsible AI makes perfect business sense.
Oh, it absolutely does.
So putting humans at the center is not just something that human rights organizations should do, like we do, but something that everybody should do, as you perfectly know.
100%. And it's not even a one or the other. And that's the beautiful piece of it too. You can absolutely combine the interest of the human and allowing them to understand which technology is going to serve their needs best. Irina, it is always a pleasure to speak with you. You are an absolute expert in the field. You know, your work, not just saving the world through your role at UNICEF, but also having done the hands-on work to actually develop algorithms. It's so inspiring to see you now guide, and like you said, guide and, inspire others. But yes, we're at the top of this hype cycle. And I think when it slows down, we're going to really see even more the impact of what you and your team do. That's when we can actually say, wow, look at all these use cases that are coming to life. Is there anything that you'd like to share with our listeners on where they can follow more of your work?
Absolutely. The Office of Innovation, and again, I'm happy to share all the links with you. I think that would be easier than dictate them. UNICEF's Office of Innovation has an extensive website that details a lot of our projects, ongoing projects, and finalized projects. And some of them are absolutely mind-blowingly impactful and have reached so many children around the world. Also, please feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I share quite a few of talks and conversations I give at various events and the learnings that I bring from those events, as well as the stories from UNICEF and the work that we do.
That's beautiful. And I think for those that want to learn a little bit more about UNICEF's work in general, obviously, what do we really have to say? UNICEF is all about promoting children's rights globally, and that includes education, well-being of the child, doing stunning work, which hopefully is going to be a wonderful exponential use case for artificial intelligence. Irina, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and it's been wonderful to reconnect.
Thank you very much. Next up, my conversation with Eve Logunova-Parker, founder of Evenness, with a focus on accessible, sustainable global innovation through AI and Web3 technologies. Eve, it is such a pleasure to have you here today.
Jos, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure, and I am super excited to share my insights and knowledge with all the listeners out there. So hello, everyone. And yeah, bring all the questions.
I love it. Well, Eve, we've really been talking a lot about AI, and it's like this black box that nobody can see and touch. I mean, obviously we're interacting with LLMs now, but why don't we start with some simple explanations? I threw out metaverse, I threw out Web3, but what does this mean? Can you explain this in simple terms for our listeners?
Black box. Yeah, it's truly a Pandora box, unless you know the how and the shortcut to ethical, less biased application of AI, and also more inclusive and accessible emerging technology, inclusive of metaverse. So speaking of where we are at the moment, I don't know the year when you were born or our listeners were born, but I was born in the 80s. So since that, I saw the rise of internet, I listened to the sounds of routers connecting, So all these experiences, now defined as Web 1, it's just the beginning of the everything online. Then we went into more static form of internet. In 2 words described: business cards, online presentation of yourself, of your business, something you can scroll through, read, and then became known as Web 2, online interface to all the experiences and content that you want to bring to the surface, so your users, consumers, customers could easily find, learn about you, and then make decision about buying from you or engaging with you. What we see now is an amazing shift. And this is still brand new. It will take probably another 4 years to educate everyone in the world and have the capacity of technology to process all the graphics. So GPU power is required to host metaverse experiences, to host immersive experiences. And this is the form of a new internet that is more engaging, collaborative, and creative. It comes with virtual economy. It comes with virtual money. It comes with virtual experiences where you as an avatar in your digital form can go throughout all the spaces, whether it's educational campuses, right? Or you want to travel to some countries and you can really experience walking in those countries, going to exhibitions or experiencing the cultures and traditions. So that becomes a framework for economic interoperability that is embodying virtual reality experience in a nutshell. So this being said, from static, where we could just scroll and read, we go into immersive, where we are actively engaged, can shake hands, can dance our little dances, and can actually be present in the audience, learning from the speakers. No difference, well, a little bit, but not so much difference from physical events. The benefit, though, is that you can do it all from the premises of your house or your office space without the need for traveling, hence minimizing the carbon emissions, optimizing your times, and saving actually moments for your family than just traveling and commuting. So I hope I explained it in simple terms, but what we see indeed is the more engaging form of internet, and that's Web 3.
That's perfect. I love that explanation. And what made you interested in working in this space? So why the metaverse? Why Web 3?
I spent 15 years working with innovative businesses, with innovation labs on various forms of AI, robotics, payment schemes for autonomous driving cars, name it. So in 2018, I decided to become a consultant. Also, I launched a chapter for women in AI in the Netherlands. And in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, we came up with this accelerator for women founders who were interested in AI and data science and machine learning that was still kind of new, and we wanted to support them. So I started looking at the options. Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, all the standard kind of solutions. but they lacked engagement. They lacked opportunity to present yourself and your business in an interactive way. Yes, you can show your PowerPoint, but hey, after so many PowerPoints on flat screens, it becomes really a bother. And I found that company called Virbela. They're one of the leaders in the metaverse virtual reality domain, mostly specializing in enterprise solutions. And they showed me another way of interacting with people. And it blew my mind. Like literally, I saw it right then what the future holds. 2 months in, we experienced the pandemic. Humanity was so shaken. Oh my God, how do I learn? How do I earn my money? How do I see my relatives? I cannot do anything. I am stuck at home. Bingo. So by organizing our global accelerator, name of it, bringing all those women as avatars in the virtual reality, accessible through the web interface, you could use the headset, but you could also use your desktop. There was no challenge buying additional infrastructure if you don't have funds for it. And that became a consistent experience throughout the pandemic for all the programs of women in AI. And also it became my eureka moment when I said, okay, I know AI, I know infrastructure, I know IT automation. I was missing diversity, equity, inclusion in the tech domain. Now, by focusing on the metaverse at that moment, the metaverse will happen in years from now, once we're ready for that. But we can enable and empower people and bring them together in a simple way, if technology is built correctly, in a sustainable way, so you can download everything and execute your programs seamlessly. So that was my eureka moment, and Evenness was born right there. Next day, I went to the Chamber of Commerce and said, I am going to register. I see the potential. I want to be part of it.
That's incredible. So this journey was fueled by a global crisis. It was also fueled by your own research, trying to find solutions, and then actually stumbling upon a massive problem. Now you've been working in this space for a couple of years, I think 4 years now. Eve, what keeps you up at night about it?
Well, great that you asked that. It's been keeping me up at night for almost all the years of my corporate career. Businesses usually focus on profits, and it's understandable. That's the point of business. You need to make money and not only make happy investors, but also get your own check and live happily ever after. Now, the thing is that by prioritizing profits, only profits, you kind of deprioritizing people. And you are not paying attention or prioritizing that part of inclusion, engagement, ethics, and collaboration. So I decided to change it. And it started in 2020 with founding Evenness, when I realized my purpose and my mission to enhance digital accessibility. And this is a kind of not a funny one, but scary one, to be honest. It's not only about gender. Oh, we do not have too many women. There's no gender parity in the tech domain. Yes, it's the fact. It will take us 130 years to get there, or longer, because everything is changing. Politics are not in our favor as women. So this is one side of things. But if you give it a thorough look, there are 1.3 billion people with mental or physical health challenges. That means arthritis, mobility issues, ADHD, autism, various forms of, there's dyslexia. So there are various forms of something that makes people unique in how they consume, how they process, how they educate themselves. And accessibility to technology is key factor. You can be a wonderful startup with creative teams, seeing that opportunity and building that solution that will really, be amazing and change the world as you think. But if you build it without the standards of web accessibility and also sustainability, because they are interlinked, forget about it. Forget about being successful, because people won't simply able to use it. And they're like 1.3 billion people. It's 1 in 6 of us, to be honest, to make it simple. They have purchasing power of $10 trillion. And the funny fact there, they cannot spend those funds, right? On their necessities, on their experiences. So this means we need to kind of see how, as a business, if you want to get profit, you make it accessible to your consumers to easily navigate your website, your web app, and your virtual experience. Now, from the impact point of view, it's just right to have everyone part of this innovation and innovative evolution, revolution, name it. So how do we go and design and develop and build knowing that we do not leave people behind? Many still have to learn technology, but you can also be a creative. You can use the tech to create courses, to create assets, to create some experiences, whether it's in Unity or Unreal Engine. These are the key platforms for building your immersive experiences. You can give jobs to everyone in a remote way. So if they have mobility issues, they still can work from home. If they have some of the other limitations, they still can engage. So therefore, this fact of seeing how many people are left behind just keeps me awake at night, knowing that in my power, with my years of experience and the knowledge that I have and the business acumen that I bring to that same table, there is an opportunity to build business that is not only profitable and successful, but first and foremost is impactful, bringing positive impact to all those people who have been forgotten. And that is my answer.
Okay, so you've given us the moral code. You've given us the financial breakdown. Why don't we do it? And you've given us the stats, 1 in 6. But then why do we still struggle? And why do we have to have, and I'm so glad we have you, don't get me wrong, but why do we have to have an amazing person like you keep telling us we need to do this? What makes it so hard to bridge that divide?
Well, I'm not the only one. Unfortunately, business budgets are allocated to other priorities. And that's mostly associated with, legacy systems that are not performing well. We need to move to something new. It requires tremendous budgets, all these tools. We need to train our staff. We need to meet the compliance, register patents, financial, taxes, all this stuff. A lot of businesses or business leaders, there's research from McKinsey, Gartner, name all these big players. They all agree and they all show in their research that business leaders, they do not prioritize that. They do not understand it because they put it in the box of, it's probably marketing. And you know how it is with marketing. Marketing is doing their job, but it's like a side thing. Though it's not, it brings you customers. So this assumption that accessibility is an afterthought is what challenges the perception of many. How to go about it? There should always be in every business, especially starting from last year, hopefully many businesses started many years back, focus on environmental social governance, principles, strategy, and execution. That means you are building your business as sustainable as possible, saving our planet for future generations and for ourselves, minimizing the damage and risk. Then you have society in the center. So you build the solutions that are meant for people to get on board, whether it's technology, e-commerce, or any other business. They can be part of it and can use your services. And last but not least, governance. So how compliant you are, how do you execute in the responsible way that can support setting a benchmark for others to understand and mitigate all the risks as well with that. Many do not see ESG, environmental social governance strategy, as big of priority unless the government says you have to, and if you don't, there are fines attached. And here's the thing. Next year in Europe, that's where everyone would feel it. Every online business has no escape from this. European Accessibility Act coming in action. That means, in simple terms, if our listeners know GDPR, the Data Protection Act, well, it's as strict as that. So if you're not meeting GDPR standards, you are in trouble. Millions and millions of fines you can have as a business. And that comes with the impact to protect people's data, to protect their privacy, not to use people for whatever profit and scam idea you have in mind. Accessibility Act, the European Accessibility Act, it will enforce accessibility principles in online domain, whether you are operating in the audio space and people listen to your music or your podcast online, or kiosks where they buy something on the go, or any website, any web app, and any gamified experience, games, virtual experiences. If you do not meet those standards, good luck. And we just published a white paper that explains what are the regulations that you need to meet as a business. It's on our Evenness website. It's free. You download it and just educate yourself. And that comes with the how. So then you see that your product designers and your product owners and your marketing people and also probably diversity, equity, inclusion people and your business leaders should have the strategy with ambassadors assigned, how to build your products to become accessible, how to execute internally that people are on board and engaged as well, because employees usually like secondary to customers. Sometimes they're also left behind. So therefore, it is about design, it's about development, and it's about the go-to-market execution in a responsible way, ethical way, that is based on sustainable and accessible design. Once that's prioritized, off we go, finally. And that's my mission, to educate people.
That's absolutely incredible. And it, on one hand, it reminds me a little bit of this conversation we had in the 1970s. Again, this is not about gender for me. I'm just drawing a comparison to our global history. But very simple example is, we don't have any women in this room. We should find some and add them. And I just want and wish that it was a more ingrained part of our culture of building from the ground up, right? So if you have a family member with a neurodegenerative disease, or you have a child with a neurodegenerative disease, or you yourself have something that withholds you from quote unquote full participation in society, then it's top of mind 100% of the time. But if we don't, it's like we ignore it. So the work you are doing is undoubtedly world-changing. I stand by it. I support it. And I will encourage everybody to check out the guidelines you and your team have clearly put on your website. Get in touch with you if they need to be walked through how any of this works, especially in the metaverse. But Eve, I'm going to ask you this question. Again, this shift can happen online, but we don't do it as people. We don't organically do it as people. So how do you bridge that divide?
Do you remember how Zoom started?
I feel like when you tell me, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, but please tell us the story. I can't wait.
So the story is very simple. It started as an initiative, as an idea, as just startup, a business, but we do not know actually their story, how they started. There could be an amazing story, but we just accept it's the standard nowadays. We use Zoom for talking to people, and we don't question how to use it, because majority of people, they know, unless they come from those parts of the world where internet is not stable and there's no need to do anything remote and they work in the fields. Okay, Zoom is not your solution. But Zoom started as an idea that blew minds of everyone. And it was hard in the beginning to understand how it works. But I think within a year or two, people got it. Businesses got it. They started pushing that solution, and communities got it. They started using it for events, and then the whole world got it. And then there were competitors and various initiatives. So everything starts, and it takes time to create awareness, to educate people, to bring them on board and give that skill of being kind of comfortable. The comfort, though, comes also with the feeling of being safe, feeling welcomed, feeling that you can do things. And once it sparkles the interest within you and is aligned with your passions, then you're like, okay, this is my tool. I want to use it. So we are in the stage with immersive solutions, AR, augmented reality, VR, virtual reality, MR, mixed reality. People would say it's just in the beginning. No, it started like in cave people times when they put like little animals on the cave walls and put the special flames in special angles so they would see little movement of those animals on the cave walls, and it gave this kind of immersive experience. We started back in the day. Technology-wise, we started in the beginning of the 20th century with little kind of devices, little progression, and it speeded up recently because we have the capacity, we have the right technology to process the digital assets, to be able to send from one device that's same experience to another device, making it accessible to people to jump into the experience and use it and experience it. It is not yet a standard. It will take time. Cloud computing. I was working at IBM. It took us 4 years only to preach and teach. And then the businesses start to understand, okay, so what's Watson? Same with any other industry. So therefore, we are now in the phase that is more commercially, metaverse is a more commercial term or a term for creators who come and create fashion, some experiences, and they just do it because it's a hobby. And they make money on the side because they know how to. Virtual economy is here now, but it's not accessible or understood by masses. And there will be time once we have this GPU power in place that is more accessible and affordable, and then we can have all the rendering and we have the sustainable, accessible design in place that people in rural areas can download the solution and use it. Only then we can say, okay, that's better than Zoom. We all know it, and we're going to hang out in the virtual environment. But it will take time.
It will take time. And I think the unfortunate part is that as humanity, as society, we are so focused on our day to day, forgetting all the perspectives, all the mobilities, all the types of people out there. And almost it's fascinating the work that you're doing. I'm so honored to have you, on this podcast sharing some of it. What should educators know? What should decision makers know today about being more inclusive, whether it's being smart about the third party supplier that they buy from, or whether they vet from the get-go and leverage a framework from the get-go that promotes inclusive design? What do you recommend that educators and decision makers can do today?
Great question. Thank you, Jos. So once Evenness is ready, I'll just recommend, let us know, use our platform, and it will make it super easy for you. We're still building. Therefore, my recommendation is very straightforward. Open web accessibility guidelines, read them thoroughly, extract all the points that you need to meet and meet them. See what you need to redesign, see how you can design your new products in a way that is already compliant. You have different standards. You have ADA, American Disabilities Act. You have WCAG, so this is Web Accessibility Guidelines. You have the upcoming European Accessibility Act. Every compliance, every regulator has their own websites with everything described. Just go there and extract the right information. They have checklists. Then find an auditor. You can find someone from the community or who specializes in it to give a review to your website or your web page or your web app or immersive experience, finding the flaws. Because one thing is getting people on board, right? And the second thing is protect your business from regulators. And then you have, so all the vendors, all the stakeholders pretty much, they need to be educated why you're building your business in an accessible way. Because there is more than profit. Again, there is impact, and that will show your business in a better way. Because if you commit to that mission, and it's not marketing, but if you commit to that mission, it's authentic. It really drives attention. If you believe in it and you're doing it, then other people would feel that as well. And this is a big differentiator. So simple as that. Just go and check the guidelines.
I love it. Go and check the guidelines, build it into your way of thinking, to who you are, what you stand for as an organization. And it's just one of those things where I do worry that people are, one, already overwhelmed by technology that feels very comfortable for you and me, and I think to some of our listeners by now as well. But ultimately, we're still dealing with issues of what does this technology mean? Is it going to replace people? What's going on with the development of the tech? So it's a bit of a scramble. And I feel like because we've been living in that scramble since 2019, now we are seeing Russia's unprovoked war in Ukraine still taking place. We see humanitarian disaster in Gaza. There's so much going on for the human body and mind to process right now that your leadership in this space is even more important. It's even more important that we keep shining a light on it. How do you see this affecting the student of the future?
First of all, immersive experiences or any digital experiences, they should be complementary to physical ones. And they should not be like either or unless you cannot do physical. like you cannot travel or there are different concerns for your health, there always should be an option. That's accessibility again, freedom of choice. I'm a student right now. I'm conducting my MBA in IT management. I chose remote because it meets my needs. It meets my preference. But other person would say, but I really want to see people around me. I want to choose physical. And the same thing comes with events. I don't say you should not be attending. I love physical events. You see people, you talk to them, you bond with them. But also there are moments where you just simply can't travel. Your kid is sick or you're super busy at work. You can't do that time slot, but you cannot travel. So that makes it more, it gives you more freedom in living your lives and doing things. For students of the future, it's not actually future. It's already present. We work with a lot of colleges and universities building the experiences. So now Yorkville University in Canada, MIT Sloan, Columbia University, a lot of businesses with their own universities, they all experiment with virtual reality and web immersive experiences. That makes it, first, educational journey, giving new skills to people, to students. Secondly, it makes it easier for people to come together and for students to learn. With all the interactive presentations, them being there and feeling the vibe. And I think those virtual campuses should be parallel with physical campuses. And that makes, I think, the educational landscape more tech capable and more innovative in a way.
Fair enough. And I can see that this is beautiful. The story of accessibility never stops, because if we add a layer to that, again, it works for the students that are already in countries where that infrastructure is strong enough. And that adds another dimension that we need to think about. And I always think ultimately the technology must serve the humans where they're at also. Like we can't just, because the infrastructure is not in place, ignore an entire group, an entire population. No, what we should do is either leapfrog, implement strategically, and or use the tech that is applicable to that environment. Eve, is there anything about your work that you'd like our listeners to know, what they can get from working with you and your team, for example?
We do organize a lot of projects with, paid projects and community projects. With businesses, it's usually to support their employees or organize some initiatives to feature their businesses to broader groups or help them to meet communities. We serve as a bridge, not only between Web 2 and Web 3, but also between different players and stakeholders of the innovative landscape. So they'll have a chance to meet each other and share their knowledge. It's all about learning for us and about new experiences. So if you are a business, you can reach out and discuss how we can bring immersiveness to your business and also enable you with community outreach. But for those who are not businesses, and that's where the power is, you can reach out at all times and say, I want to have that skill. I really want to organize something, build something that is immersive. I don't know how, but I have this passion. And even if you know how, you just want to organize something as community projects, just let us know. We've been building last year amazing experiences. They're accessible and free and open on Spatial. That's a platform. Global Digital Pride, Atlanta and Amsterdam. They were a true success.
Wonderful.
Every listener can come and experience. Just search for it. Organized in partnership with an organization called Choice, LGBTQIA. And then a lot of immersive events for fast prototyping, technical skills. We have Gallery Respect, showcasing the stories and history of people of color. This is one great example. You would learn right there by seeing all the portraits, by even using QR codes where those people start talking to you. You can ask questions in real times and they will respond to your questions. It's interactive, it's advanced.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Eve. We will include all of these links, of course, so that our listeners can access them easily. It has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. And you are an inspiration to innovators, technologists, and people that want to create around the world. So thank you very, very much.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. And everyone who wants to learn more about Evenness, that stands for not Eve, but diversity of species and mathematical numbers, you can go and visit evenness.rocks.
Thank you so much, Eve. And I just want to say one more thing about that. Yes, you're right. This is not a nice to have anymore. It's a must have. And that's why everybody strongly encourage you to go to evenness.rocks, where you will learn way more about the state of accessible design and compliance for technology products as we continue to build them. This is no longer a nice to have. To be fair, it never was. This is a must have. So please reach out to Eve and her team. They are powerhouses. Eve, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Jos. Enjoy the rest of the day as well. Bye now.
A huge thank you to both of our guests. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Making Sense of AI. We hope you enjoyed listening and that it's given you valuable insights. If you found today's discussion enlightening, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. This podcast was brought to you by Turner and Binova AI. To deploy AI at your business today, reach out now via the links in the description or directly on LinkedIn. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep on making sense of AI. Goodbye for now.